Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the story of Elon Musk's money, but maybe not in the way you'd expect. We're going to look past the big, flashy numbers and get to the heart of it, because his financial strategy is built on something way more powerful than just a balance sheet.
So how do you even begin to explain a fortune that big? I mean, you could throw around some crazy numbers, right? Billions of dollars, stock prices that are just out of this world. But honestly, if you really want to get it, you've got to look past the spreadsheets.
You explain it with a story, and it is a powerful story. By taking it apart piece by piece, we're going to uncover some universal truths about financial storytelling that, believe it or not, apply to all of us, not just the billionaires. Okay, here's our game plan. First, we'll tackle why it's all about story over stats. Then, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of what I'm calling the reinvestment engine. From there, we'll dig into the mindset and money lessons behind it all. And to wrap up, we'll bring it all home and talk about your financial story. All right, let's jump right in. We're starting with the big idea that really underpins everything we're going to talk about today. This right here, this is the core principle. Think about it. People just remember stories better than they remember a list of facts. A good story makes complicated stuff, well, stick. And Musk's journey? It's not just a bunch of financial transactions. It's a masterclass in crafting this epic narrative, A story about a sustainable future, about humanity going to Mars. And that's a story that investors, employees, and basically the whole world can get behind and invest in. Okay, so if the story is the why, then how did it actually power the what? Let's take a look under the hood at the financial engine that turned this big, grand narrative into actual real-world companies. Now, this timeline here, this is the pivotal moment. Check this out. Early 2000s, he sells his stake in PayPal. Now, the normal, sane thing to do would be to bank that money, right? Secure the bag. But no, he reinvested everything. He founded SpaceX in 2002 and then became the biggest shareholder in Tesla by 2004. So that one big win wasn't the finish line. It was just the fuel for something even bigger.
And that right there is the key idea in action. Reinvestment. Simple as that. Instead of cashing out and playing it safe, he pushed all his chips back in on this, frankly, kind of crazy long-term vision. It was a massive all-or-nothing bet on the future he wanted to build.
I love this analogy because it makes so much sense. It's not about enjoying the one pie you baked. It's about using the flour from that one success to bake 3 even bigger pies. That single PayPal payout, it literally became the seed money for companies that completely turned industries on their head. But let's be real. Making a move like that, going all in on such a high-stakes bet, that's not just a financial tactic you read about in some textbook. It takes a certain kind of mindset to pull that off. And this is so important. That strategy we just saw on the timeline, it only happens because of the philosophy you see right here. The choice to risk every penny wasn't just a cold calculation. It was driven by a deep, powerful belief in the story he was trying to create. A story about a future that back then didn't even exist. You can draw a straight line from that mindset to everything that came next, to rockets actually launching and landing themselves, to millions of electric cars driving on our roads today. The idea, the story, the belief, that came first. The empire? That was the result. Now, I know we're talking about billions here, which is pretty unrelatable for most of us. But these principles, you can scale them way down and they still work. It could be as simple as reinvesting the dividends from a few stocks, or taking the profits from your side hustle and putting them right back into growing it. The core idea is exactly the same. Which brings us to what I think is the most important part of this whole explainer. How does any of this apply to you? We've been using these tools to understand a billionaire's journey. But here's the thing. These principles of storytelling and reinvestment, they're totally universal. The big takeaway is that you are the author of your own financial story. Whether that story is, I'm finally getting out of debt, or I'm saving up to buy a house, or I'm building this little business from scratch, you're the one writing it with every decision you make. So I really want you to think about this. What's the next chapter in your financial story going to be? How can you use these ideas, reinvesting your own small wins, thinking in years instead of days, and telling yourself a really compelling story about where you're headed? How can that shape your path forward? Because at the end of the day, the greatest returns really do come from the stories we choose to invest in.
Thanks so much for joining this explainer. I hope it's left you feeling inspired to not just, manage your money, but to really build and tell your own incredible story of success, one chapter at a time.